Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. Hope everybody is having a great day. Let's talk about the market here as we're seeing some very interesting things happen in terms of volatility, the broader market, and how some of the individual names are doing, especially in the AI trade. We're still continuing to see a little bit of uncertainty that is surrounding the market with some selling pressure, even with the market that's being relatively resilient. On top of that, we have the government shutdown that is hoping to come to an end here, and we'll be talking about where Palantir sitting all kind of in the mix of this whole mumble and jumble. And of course, looking over to cryptocurrencies, how is Ethereum and BMNR doing, experiencing a little bit of some selling pressure? Some very interesting things that we need to talk about. If you are a new or returning viewer, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos. We're trying to hit 30,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's see if we can do it. Pop it up on the screen here. Palantir closes at 190.96, this is awesome. The reason I say that is because we're starting to see a little bit of selling pressure and that uncertainty that is still kind of looming around within the AI trade. And I like to use Palantir as a really strong barometer for how the AI trade is doing. Reason being is because they are a leader within the competitive software edge for Palantir, for AI, and also they carry a very high valuation. We know this. In terms of this valuation that is continuing to maintain at these levels and is priced at a very high share, target, sitting right here at 190, only down about 1.3% of the day. Palantir is doing a good job holding above this long consolidation zone near these all-time highs between the 171 and the 187 after a large reversal is triggered right at that 170. This sell-off from the 207 to the 170s kind of after the whole Burry short report came, and now you're seeing consolidation settling down a little bit here in the 190s. It'll be really interesting to see what happens in the short term. This could really swing both ways, depending on how the macroeconomic structure is going to play out. In terms of the overnight hours, we're seeing a little bit of buying pressure across the board. 191.69 right now. I mean, if Palantir is able to maintain a bullish type of perspective, if we continue to see calls coming in and buying pressure, that's where you're probably going to see testing around that $200 level of resistance again. And if for some reason we don't, then Palantir is probably just going to fall back into this consolidation phase, which is a reliable point since it did spend a good amount of time there consolidating back in that accumulation zone. Talking about the stock market today, we still actually see a finish in the green. You see the Dow here that actually closes at record highs, and what you do have with the S&P 500 is up about 0.2%, closing here at 68.46. One of the big things that helped to keep resiliency within the broader market was Apple. That came up about 2.16%. But some of the concerns that we are seeing that are starting to loom the market is a large sell-off that we see with CRWV, and specifically with CRWV because this kind of intertwines the whole AI trade, especially with the whole AI data center trade that we've seen have a massive run over the previous few months. CRWV right here slids more than 16% after the companies. They come out with really, really good earnings. However, the company's guidance disappointed investors, hurting the AI trade. And what you see here with CRWV dropping down to $90. It's officially under the $100. It's even touched like 87, 88 right here. So it'll be interesting to see how this gets digested tomorrow. Are we going to see dip buyers come in or a continuation of CRWV that does sell off? One of the big concerns here regarding this individual stock is with the AI data center trade, you now have a lot of competitors that are starting to catch a bid and gain a lot of traction. You know, we had CRWV and Nebius, which are kind of the first ones, but some of the big ones that are now popping up on the radar are you have Cipher Mining, and then you have IREN on top of that. And people saying is IREN taking some of the market share of CRWV, especially as both of these recent companies have announced very, very big AI deals. And Cipher down here about 5%. So we're seeing a little bit of a sell-off across the board in the AI data center trade. One of the big things that we could see that kind of helped ignited this was NVDA dropping down below 200 again, losing that 200 at 195. One of the big pieces of information that we see today is that SoftBank sells its $5 billion of NVIDIA stake, its full stake. And of course, you're going to see spookiness. Why is SoftBank selling that? What do they know that we don't know? But I love here, Chris Camillo comes out with a very interesting tweet saying SoftBank is selling its $5 billion of NVIDIA to fund its $22 billion OpenAI bet, which then uses the cash to buy more NVIDIA chips, saying he's still maintaining a long position on NVIDIA. And this, you can see here how liquidity is just moving around. But however, even with these announcements and with different types of liquidity that are even going towards the AI trade, you're seeing uncertainty that is continuing to arise. So we'll see if that does settle down here. I think after these stocks are continuing to take a little bit of a breather, these individual stocks, even though we're seeing the market that's being relatively resilient in terms of the broader index. And that leads me over into cryptocurrency right here at Ethereum and looking at Bitcoin back down here to about 103 over the last 24 hours, down about 3%, Ethereum down about 5%. You see down here at 34.27. Very interesting moves for Ethereum because now it's just been kind of hanging out here over the last week. It's up about 3%. Came back up tier to the 35.50, kind of tested that and got rejected, and now it's kind of hanging out here at 34.27. In terms of Ethereum, that's just been kind of stabilizing here at the low 3,000s, mid 3,000s even. Doesn't bother me much. It's consolidation across the board and is continuing to establish its base. In terms of technical perspectives, I don't really do a ton of technical analysis. The reason why I kind of got interested in Ethereum again, of course, was we've talked about it before, Tom Lee and BMNR, and specifically what his goal is to try to achieve 5% of the circulating supply of Ethereum in terms of the alchemy of numbers, having the power behind that, and what that staking can do in terms of revenue and how that can affect BMNR's financial balance sheet. BMNR is at a very interesting price point right here. You can see it's been kind of hanging out here in the 40s, even dipped below, and technically there's a very strong support level right at the 40s for BMNR. So this is also at a very interesting point too. I mean, that's why you're seeing some uncertainty here, because you're seeing sell-off across these individual names that are at some very critical technical points, and we're seeing some of the fundamentals. It's like, hey, are these still remaining strong? You know, that's what your own opinion is to hopefully formulate. My opinion, I think the fundamental thesis for the end of the year and for the AI trade still remains strong, even though, like I said, we're seeing some cooling off. Looking at BMNR right here, the last time we had a major reversal there was during a major run up at that 40 where it was tested, and that's where you had BMNR that sat here and swing traded between the 60s and the 50s for a decent amount of time before eventually falling back down here to the 40s again, and even came down here and triggered a reversal at 35. So just basically, I'll be sitting on the sidelines for BMNR here too. We'll see how Ethereum reacts in terms of its price. I think once this catches a bid, a lot of people, even Tom Lee, saying that this is going to be the most hated rally. And I think that's because we're seeing a lot of institutional ownership that is starting to pick up. I've seen some graphs on X. I mean, I don't know how reliable they are, but I've seen a decent amount of graphs on X that are showing that institutional ownership is accumulating at a rapid pace while retail ownership is decreasing, just the amount of value per Ethereum wallets and the amount of those wallets. That's what we're seeing on chain. One of the reasons that we could see here is a lot of shaking out with Ethereum, with a lot of shaking out in terms of the general market, these individual names. Market makers, are they trying to search? You know, their job is to search for liquidity, triggering a lot of stops, shaking out, and trying to basically get these retail traders to capitulate to that last moment before we start to see a bid that comes back into the market. Now, looking in terms of like we talked about with the institutions, Charles Schwab here, very big traditional finance sector, just disclosed a $1.7 million BMNR shares worth $88.9 million. One of America's biggest asset managers is now exposed to Ethereum through BitMine. So a lot of these big institutional owners are using BMNR as their exposure to Ethereum. A lot of people saying, hey, if all these institutions are buying BMNR, you know, why is it just sitting here at this $40? Like I said, trading, it can go both ways. I like what the institutions are doing. Fundamentally, the thesis is still strong, and that's why I'm going to maintain a bullish perspective on this until the fundamentals change. However, I still think the bet on Wall Street that is going to be tokenizing a lot of these assets. We've seen it from Robinhood building the next type of financial sector on the blockchain. It's going to be utilizing Ethereum. That's what it looks like right now. So I'll be maintaining that and trying to ride that wave whenever it comes, just kind of hanging out in the calm water before the storm. Now, that's really all that I have for you guys. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the market here. Really excited for the government to reopen so we get that uncertainty behind us. It looks like, that's kind of being priced in as we speak. We'll see if the S&P 500 kind of recaptures that 6,900 zone. There's been a lot of volatility here between kind of the 66, 6,800 area, but we see it breathing and taking a little bit of a breath right here. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Peace out. Take care. Hope you guys all have a wonderful day.